Like, I think there's one thing that perhaps companies tend to do better than we do as individuals, and as far as our careers are concerned. I mean, as the year's drawing to a close, some companies' financial years are also drawing to a close and whatever else. And generally, what tends to happen is that you are evaluated as a person. You are evaluated based on the value that you've brought to the company over the year and whatever else. And those kinds of conversations generally would be starting between now and over perhaps about like the next 6 or 7 months. Those are the conversations. And one of the things that I've actually gone and done, and it has actually, I believe, has helped me quite a bit, is I actually realized that there's a set of requirements that every company has. Whenever they have a vacancy and whatever else, they have their set of requirements. And if you meet enough of these requirements, they are the non-negotiables and whatever else in terms of your expected salary, your skill level, and whatever else. But as long as you meet enough of these, enough of the non-negotiables, then there's a big chance that you might actually get the job itself. But what I've actually, and I had this conversation with a very close friend of mine, is that what I believe you actually ought to do is also have your own set of requirements, whether it be career growth, salary, learning opportunities, and whatever else. And as long as there's enough overlap between these requirements, you'll be happy in the job. And as soon as more and more of your own non-negotiables, and I think it more often than not happens more to you personally than it does to the organization, but I believe perhaps it also happens to the organization. But as soon as there isn't enough overlap between what you say you want or what is non-negotiable for you versus what is non-negotiable for the company. And I think that's where the friction actually starts. That's where the dissatisfaction, that's where you become less engaged in the job itself. That is where you become frustrated. Perhaps you're not growing as quickly as you wanted. Perhaps you feel like they're not paying you enough. Whatever those non-negotiables actually are for you. And for me, one of the things that I think is actually necessary is to actually think about your non-negotiables, about where you want your career to go, dispassionately. You want to actually look at these independent of any individual, independent of any organization. These are the things that you want personally for you. And as long as there's enough overlap between you and the organization that you are with, no problem. But as soon as you start seeing perhaps a disparity, because as soon as you start seeing perhaps a disparity in that the things that actually matter to you are growing less and less relevant to your daily tasks, I think that is at that point where you need to perhaps speak up. But if nothing can be done, then perhaps also a different conversation needs to be had, because these requirements and these list of things that you're expected to do, those are things that generally decide your progression within the organization. But I do think that you also have to have your own list of requirements in terms of the organization remaining in your life personally. You also have to think about where do you want your career to go? What are the kind of projects? What's the type of work that you feel is meaningful? That the type of work that you really want to grow in and whatever else. And as soon as you start seeing less and more disparity between that, then perhaps you need to start having a different conversation. And I think towards the end of the year, that's generally where we start thinking about New Year's resolutions and whatever else. And I think it is necessary to actually start thinking about even your own career over the next year. What do you want it to look like? Over the next 2 years, what would you like your career to look like? And what are those things that you would have to do? What are those things that you would have to learn? What are those projects that perhaps you would have to work on in order for you to gain the necessary skill and knowledge that you are after, or that next level in your career? And once you actually have those list of requirements, then it becomes easy to actually say, of all the things that I want, perhaps only 2 of these 5 things that I'm looking for can actually happen in this organization. Then this has nothing to do with whether it's a good or bad company or not. This is everything to do with where you want to go and whether that can actually happen in this vehicle that you are in right now. And for me personally, as soon as you actually start having that, once you start having those non-negotiables and say, listen, at this phase of my career, I really need to be in an environment where I'm consistently learning, consistently being challenged. And if that's not happening here, then we need to have a different conversation altogether. Once you are able to actually have those list of requirements and say, I need this, and if you can't give me this, then we have a problem. And that, to me, I feel like it gives you more power. You have more control over your career, because now you can make different decisions. So even if this next decision means you have to move to a new company, once you start looking and you realize that you perhaps don't qualify, you don't have enough certifications and whatever else, that then tells you, if you want to move to this next level, if you want this next part of your career to actually happen, you're going to have to focus on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things over the next year or over the next 6 months and whatever else, and then make the jump. But now it's a controlled jump. Now you know what you need to do. You know what you need to be studying. You know what you need to what courses you need to register for and all of those other things. You know what now you need to do in order for you to make that next jump. And I think that is incredibly empowering when you start off the new year and you know exactly what that year needs to look like in order for you to make the next jump.